Hello, this is David Godfrey, and I propose that the woeful Senate trial, so-called trial, of Donald Trump in the United States Senate and his most unfortunate exoneration is a symptom of what I call the Southernization of the United States. I believe that, first of all, the impeachment process showed and revealed the decay of democracy in this country. And I submit to you that the decay of democracy has been instigated by the increasing Southern flavor of the United States. America is becoming more like Dixie, and Dixie is intrinsically hostile to freedom and democracy. Now, let me explain why. Now, Dixie's antipathy toward freedom is not only rooted in slavery. In large measure, Dixie temperamentally has nothing to do with the America that we like to think of as a bastion of freedom and liberty, because the people who settled the Virginia colony and the people who settled the Massachusetts colony came from opposite ends of the English political spectrum. To simplify matters, Virginia was settled by the political right of England. Massachusetts was settled by the political left of England. Virginia was settled by those Englishmen who were opposed to Cromwell and sided with the crown. Partial to the crown, they obviously had a dim view of empowering the common people. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was settled by the Puritans. They were, of course, very rigid in terms of morality, but their fierce Protestantism was implicitly democratic because the Protestants abhorred the Catholic notion that the priests and the popes had more insight than the laymen. The Puritans were sometimes said to be the most adamant Protestants, and this not only instilled a harsh and unforgiving moral code, but also paved the way for a detestation of royalty because they detested the royalty of the Catholic Church, i.e., the priests and the Pope, etc. The Southern antipathy toward democracy is evident in many facets of Southern life. The South made it very hard for not only blacks, but also poor whites to vote. I read an article in the New Yorker about 15 years ago that noted that at the beginning of the 20th century, Alabama passed a law denying the franchise to anyone who did not have $10,000 in cash assets. 10 grand was a rather princely sum at the beginning of the 20th century. Very simply, Alabama denied most whites, as well as all blacks, the right to vote. Also, many congressional districts in the South have a candidate from only one party on the ballot. How democratic is that? Also, the Southern hostility toward ordinary people is even evident in their theory of disease. Poor Southerners used to have a diet that consisted chiefly of cornmeal, lard, and beans. The cornmeal was processed. The diet was pitifully low on B vitamins and induced pellagra, a vitamin B3 deficiency disease. Because B vitamins are required for good nervous systems, people with pellagra showed intellectual, motor, and emotional deficits. The Southern aristocrats reasoned that their servants had pellagra because they were born to be inferior. They were so intent on seeing their servants as innately inferior that they were blind to their pitiful diet. Incidentally, during the era of FDR, a Jewish doctor from New York, a Joseph Goldberger, went down south and showed those damn Southern aristocrats that food could cure pellagra. Now, Dixie began to dominate American politics and culture when Nixon inaugurated his Southern strategy. This was a strategy in which the Republican Party would capture American government by winning the South. It won the South by paying homage to Southern racism and thick-headedness. Once the Republican Party had intelligent, moderate, and liberal luminaries such as Nelson Rockefeller, Jacob Javits, John Lindsay, Charles Goodell, Percy Schweitzer, and many others. Today it has men like Mitch McConnell, and everyone in the party seems to be a clone of Mitch McConnell. Men so arrogant and morally empty that they remind me of Scarlett O'Hara's father in Gone with the Wind, proudly announcing that he has invested his money in Confederate bonds. Culturally, the Southernizing of America is evident in the bleach blonde Texan mental vacuity that seems to pervade our nation. I think it started when Martha Mitchell, the wife of Nixon's Attorney General, said before she broke with the administration that Julia Child, a woman who had a French cooking show on public television, ought to stop cooking fancy French food and be patriotic and make some Southern fried chicken. Most of the Southernization of America is exemplified by the intellectual degradation of the nation. Compare the speeches of FDR, JFK, and Adlai Stevenson with the toddler-like gibberish of George Bush, the hysterical outbursts of fat, seemingly pubescent Donald Trump, and the snoring, boring, meaningless digressions of imminently senile Joe Biden, who can be considered an honorary Southerner given some of his racist comments and his representation of Delaware, which was a quasi-Southern state. Most of all, the South was enthralled to a caste system. There were, in the Southern world, 4 types of people: white trash, field niggers, and house niggers. And these 3 groups were all born to bow down low before the lords and ladies who strutted and sneered with all the arrogance of German Junkers. They loudly profess to abide by Christianity, but they worshipped at the mansions of plantation aristocrats, just as the stately manor homes of England were the stars around which all the peasant hovels orbited. In Dixie, the legal system revels in its denial of justice. For centuries, it killed innocent blacks and a fair number of innocent poor whites, because the only people who mattered were the plantation aristocrats. Dixie justice is now American justice. Indeed, Trump's lawyers have posited and praised a form of government perfectly devoid of freedom. In oral argument, his attorneys have said that he could not be indicted while in office, even if he were to kill someone on Fifth Avenue. And that execrable excuse for a lawyer, Mr. Dershowitz, said that anything the president does to get reelected is fine and dandy, so long as it is, in his doubtlessly impartial judgment, in the public interest. And so, in the new Dixie regime that governs America, we understand that the law is meant to exonerate the king, whether he sits on a throne in London or masquerades as the president of a dying republic in Washington. Thank you. This has been David Gottfried.